Moderators ist eine sehr kleine. Wir haben ja einen alten Bekannten auf dem Podium, den Sie alle schon genießen durften. Stefan Lindegaard, Autor, Speaker und Strategic Advisor aus Dänemark. Seine Spezialthemen sind Open Innovation, Social Media und Intrapreneurship. Er wird uns heute das Vertiefungsthema zu dem Adobe-Vortrag liefern, nämlich Embrace Failure for Better Innovation. Bitte schön.
Thanks, sir. Yes, and I'm actually going to speak English, and some of us got to be a little bit crazy here. It's 20 to 6, and you want me to talk about failure. Well, maybe it's time for it, because I can start asking you a question. I don't need your replies, but I just want you to consider, when is the last time that you actually thought about your failures, reflected upon your failures? And when is the last time you learned from your failures? That's some of the topics I like to get into in the context of innovation in bigger companies. And first, I'd just like you to show you this small cartoon here. And this is how innovation used to happen. Go through this, the chasm, the crossing the chasm as it's called. You get on early on, you get some early adapters. The real game is to get to Ashton Kutcher has one, because then you got Main Street. You start making money. And once you get to Main Street, you might have 3, 4, 5, 7 years to really make money. But you know what? Those days are over. Today, you can see there's actually 4 things going on, because it's a faster pace. It's a much faster pace of business, much faster pace of change. And this also impacts innovation. Used to be that corporate innovation teams, entrepreneurs, they had to hit this window of opportunity. And it was moving like this, quite slow, so yeah, doing quite well, you could hit it. But not anymore. It's this size now, and it's moving this speed. It's becoming so much more difficult to hit this window of opportunity. And I really believe that open innovation, business model innovation, will be keys for actually becoming competitively unpredictable, to go out and unlock the new opportunities. And with open innovation, with business model innovation, also comes experimentation. Hey, and the failure that comes along with that. Here we have a problem, because most companies, we have cultures with a very little tolerance for failure. I did a survey not so long ago, and the results showed that more than half of the companies, they really don't like failure. So we got a big problem here. And it's even a bigger problem because there are no quick fixes. So in this talk, I don't want you to go out and fail all the time. But what I would like you to do is just start reflecting on what you should do when you fail. You should just put it away and say, okay, that doesn't matter, we'll just try again, and perhaps do the same mistakes over and over and over again. That would be a true waste of resources. So I would like you to start reflecting on how you can actually embrace failure in order to learn from failure. I think there's a lot of value tapped here that we could go in and get to. Just first a little bit on what kind of failure we're actually talking here. I like this notion by Paul Sloan, and I think if we go down to the latter one, incompetent failure, we don't want to see that in our companies. Okay, maybe you mess up once and a half, but if you continuously mess up, make incompetent failures, you can argue whether that person even belongs in the company. And we can also go in and look at mistakes versus failures. If people continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, well, same question. Do they belong in the company, on the team you're working on? Probably not. If you want a culture that's constructive about failure, I think we need a new vocabulary. I had some very good discussion with my online community about 2 years ago when I started digging into these issues. And we realized that failure is such a negative word that we don't touch it, executives don't want to hear about it. Maybe we need to change the vocabulary. So I started this discussion, and we came up with some quite interesting terms, and one of them was smart failing. You know, as a consultant, you try to build buzzwords and so forth. So yeah, it worked quite well. It caught on. This is something I might pursue even more. Smart failing is just embrace failure in a way you learn from it. That's where I would like to get into. We also touch about ideas such as return on failure. Could you even work with concepts like that? Maybe. There are no quick fixes to this one, but perhaps in your companies, you need a different approach to failure. You need to reconsider this more. And perhaps you'll find your own words. Perhaps you'll start create your own vocabulary that goes along with your innovation vocabulary within your company. It's actually quite amazing how important communication and a common language has become in the world of innovation today. Not many companies have a common language internally for innovation. When they do not have a common language for that, it makes it even more difficult once they open up the innovation process to work with external partners to speak the same language. We need to put much more focus on the language and the communication elements of innovation. Tim Castell, he's an Australian professor and consultant. I really like how he developed this set of failure, how in different levels you can have this one. System failure and all the way down to idea failure. And the thing here is that why not try to capture failure as early as possible? That would save lots of money early on. That's something Coke could have done. I think some of you actually remember the new Coke story. I just checked it again, but it's almost 30 years ago that Coke tried to change the formula of the Coke itself and was a complete disaster. A few months after, they had to take it back and it was really hit hard. But you know what? They had all the insight needed to actually stop this one on the idea failure level. And I actually think things like that hurt Coca-Cola and the innovation culture for a long time. What I usually do is work with companies on open innovation issues. And these are some of the learnings that I see with regards to failure when I work with them on these issues. And it's very much about the failure to anticipate and also the failure to execute. I really like Fernando's focus on execution. It's very important, the execution part of innovation. But when it comes to anticipate and execute, I mean, occasionally we fail on markets and technologies, happens often. But now we have open innovation working in ecosystems and fighting ecosystems. It's no longer just one company fighting another company. It's a set of companies in an ecosystem fighting another ecosystem and clash, they fight each other. Too often I see the companies, they fail to anticipate the importance of ecosystems, the community's innovation. And they fail to anticipate and execute on the changes that happens because changes are constant in these ecosystems. And the same goes for the platforms for bringing innovation. That is the ecosystem, but also how companies innovate in general. Too many companies have not yet accepted or even embraced open innovation as the way forward. We need to move forward on this one. I find it quite interesting that change happens faster outside the organization than inside. We know that for a long time, but this also creates pockets of opportunities. You might say to yourself, how does that fit together? Because if we're slow here, they're fast on the outside, okay, then we're lagging behind all the time. But you might not need to be the fastest out there. You just need to be faster than your competitors. And if you can go on and become faster than your competitors, you will have pockets of opportunities to execute on. I would like to share a few failures on the things I talked about here, on how companies innovate and fail to anticipate changes on this, and the platforms for bringing this out. Intuit Collaboratory. Well, it's a project from Intuit, and Intuit is a Silicon Valley, San Diego-based software company. And 2 years ago, they were one of my darlings in terms of open innovation companies. I really like what they were doing. And they had this one Intuit Collaboratory, and you can just see this could be the start of a beautiful partnership. They did entrepreneur days, summits, and they not only did they try to create physical communities and relationships with the partners and suppliers and the innovation partners in general, they also created this one as an online platform that could develop into the online community for them. But when you look at this one, and I tell you that this snapshot was taken a week ago, can someone point out to me what's wrong here? 2011. Seriously, this is the website for open innovation Intuit. It's not been updated since 2011. And it brings me to a quite important point. If you really want to become a preferred partner of choice, which is one of the key objectives of open innovation, persistency and consistency will be key. This is a major failure on how to anticipate how innovation happens today, and they're going to pay for it. I mean, in my view, Intel has become a laughingstock of open innovation. Can you just imagine the damage I'm doing to the innovation brand right now, given this talk, pointing them out like this one? All because they could not update a cycle like this one, or at least shut it down. I think this is actually failure on different levels. Okay, the Dreamliner. We could also argue the Airbus A380 and so forth, but the Dreamliner in particular. I talked about the platforms for bringing innovation to market. They've really tried to do some new things here. But in my view, unfortunately, they failed. And what I'm a bit concerned about, what we're going to see in the coming years, how is this going to affect open innovation in their industry? Are they going to backtrack? Are they going to say that, okay, it didn't work out as we planned here, but we definitely see this as the future of building planes? I'm quite curious in this one, because this is going to decide what way they're going to take. Open innovation are more close than what they've been used to some extent. So we'll see what's going to happen here. I have a small problem with Procter & Gamble because at some extent they're one of my favorite companies. They're the pioneer of open innovation, and they had this initiative called Connect Plus to Develop. And they really did great work and been doing great work for the last 10 to 12 years in this. But I also believe that the best in class should be pushed the hardest. And Procter & Gamble, this is the Connect and Develop where they connect with others. It's all about Procter & Gamble. It's about their needs, it's about their assets and how they can connect one-to-one with their partners. But they have several 100,000 people using this site. And I see a big failure at Procter & Gamble in not activating this community. I mean, if you have, let's say, 200,000 people, 400,000 people in a system like this, why not start bringing them together? So what I'm asking myself is that, are they not ready to take the next leap where experimentation is going to be a big part of it? Are they afraid for some reasons? I'm not sure. The good thing, however, again, which really pleased me, is they're actually building platforms like this one. Technology platform, business model platform in particular like this one. They had something called FutureWorks. Now they're trying to bring all these things together. So it seems like they're getting there, and they're really starting to see the bigger picture and taking open innovation to the next level. But it might be too late. They might lose this idea that within the fast-moving consumer goods, they're the kings of open innovation, the preferred partner of choice. I would pay dearly for positions like that, and they're about to gamble a little bit with that one. So we'll see what happens. I'll let this one stand for a little bit. Some of you might have noticed that I like bashing executives. They're an easy target because they're never in a conference like this anyway. So they don't fight back. But I've seen too often that they just don't get innovation. And in terms of failure, which was a reflection of my survey, they're really to blame here. And unfortunately, they're not going to be able to lead us out of it because, as we had in the discussion earlier, I don't believe that they have the knowledge, understanding, the mindset to really make innovation happen in their companies. We're starting to see a new generation of executives coming that's going to make a difference, but it's going to take another 5 to 10 years. But why do you think that executives are to blame? Here you see the top 5 reasons that 122 people in about 90 different companies submitted to me, corporate innovation people, on the top 5 failures in their companies. Too much focus on products and technology. I'll get back to that one. Unrealistic expectations. Poorly defined innovation strategy. And I added the one, if any. Very few companies actually have an innovation strategy. But when you look at this one and you kind of see a common denominator here, the ones to blame for this, top management. If top management really wanted to go in and fix it, they could do it. They're also the only one in the company that can fix it. That's why I'm a bit afraid that it's going to take us some time to get out of this valley of failures that we're going to be in for quite a while. Let me get in and talk a little bit about some solutions, some things we could do here. And I really like this visual framework here. And it comes from a consulting company called Dublin. And they're based in Chicago. And imagine about 10 years ago, they asked some interesting question. They asked, why does so much product innovation fail? We should look into this one. And guess one of the things they came up with was that, I'm not sure how they got to the figure, haven't been verified, but they actually came up that 96% of all product innovation fails. 96% sounds ridiculous. I think we've gotten better in the last 10 years. So let's say it's 80% today. And it might be like early ideas, like idea failures, like we saw on the charts of different kinds of failures. So like very early ideas being killed internally, not necessarily getting to market. But it's still a huge waste of resources. But they also learned that there's a key reason for this. And the key reason is that companies, they really, really like to invest on the product performance itself, the product or technology, the core things of their companies. And you should kind of expect that if that's where you really invest a lot of money, a lot of resources, that's where the return on investment will be, right? Wrong. They learned that it's actually everywhere else than around the product and technology that you get the best return on investment on what you're doing here. Let me show a few examples. We know Dell computers. About 15 years ago, they really took off. Can anyone just show your hands and shout out? Can someone tell me what made Dell computers a great company, a big company, huge company? Anyone? So it's on demand. You could customize your own computer. True. Other things? Yes? So direct delivery. You cut the middleman. Okay, two very good things. Yes, very important. Yes. Other things? What's the last thing we do when we pay on the internet? Well, when we go on the internet today, what's the last thing when you buy a computer? Credit card. Catching money into Dell's pockets. And a simple question, we're a bright group of people here. What happens when you get the money up front and you pay your suppliers 60 days later? Cash flow, big time. That cash flow actually built Dell Computer. The other things were great enablers, but it's the cash flow that built the company. What I really like about this one is that you can take this example and you can look more at Dublin.com. They have a very DOBLIN.com. They have a very good set of examples in there that you can look into. What I really like about this one, you can go home to Dr. No, the CFO and his disciples, and you can tell him, hey, even you, Dr. No, you can be part of innovation. And we need you to be part of innovation because here we're talking value chain, business model innovation. That's what we need to start embracing and experimenting on these things as well. Let me do another example. Just by show of hands, how many of you guys actually drive a Harley Davidson? No one drives a Harley Davidson. Is one here? Drive a Harley Davidson, the Harley Davidson motorcycle. No one's driving a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Well, when I look at motorcycles, I have one Harley Davidson here, and we don't have the bikes with just a motorcycle, and another motorcycle here. I cannot really tell the difference. I mean, it's a lot of metal and some electronics there, put together in two wheels. To me, that's what it is. But yet, immediately, I will know a Harley Davidson from the other because of what? The sound. You know, it's like a small fishing boat coming through a small town. You can hear it miles away. That's a Harley Davidson coming. But you know that Harley Davidson, they actually tried to trademark that sound. That's how you need to consider, especially if you've been in the US. I mean, Las Vegas, for example. If you go to the Harley Davidson shop in Las Vegas and other places, it's about the delivery. It's about the customer experience they're creating. And I would challenge you guys to go in and beat the product failure by focusing on some of the other types of innovation, the other 10 types of innovation mentioned here. So I kind of said that you could go more holistic in terms of your innovation, go beyond the products and technologies. Of course, you also need to identify the reason for why you're failing in your company and doing so over and over again, and create a learning process out of this. I also like to just take the next to last one, reward learning behaviors. One of the problems in companies today is we reward outcomes. We get bonuses from the results we deliver. What if we started not only to reward outcomes, but also learning behaviors? I think that would be quite interesting. And I think over time you will get a stronger and better company, a stronger and better innovation culture. Well, we talked a little bit about executives, and I kind of bashed them as I usually do. One of the key jobs of corporate innovation team is to educate. Educate the company itself on innovation. And it's not just about educating the people below you, your employees, your colleagues. You even have to take the elephant and start educating the top executives. This is difficult because top executives have huge ego. They don't want to be told they don't really know about things here, and they don't want to be told how to know about it. Even if they were, they don't have the time usually. So you still need to find different ways of getting to these executives, find trusted ears. I mean, one way you could do it, invite in peers, other executives that already have a strong innovation culture, and let them talk about how they do innovation in their companies. Peers will like to learn from other peers. That would be a way to go around it. But the education piece is getting more and more important here. About 30 years ago, this guy to my left here is Steve Blank. He's a serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. Started several companies, and he's also a professor at Stanford. And one of the things he really contributed with that is quite interesting at the moment right now is the lean startup approach. We heard a little bit about that earlier today from Mark as well. This is part of the lean startup approach. And it says scientific experimentation and validated learning. I'm just asking you, why should that only be for startups? There's a guy called Ed Rees, written the Lean Startup book. Yeah, that's it. And he's now trying to bring this into big corporations. I really hope he succeeds. Because we could do so much better on big companies if we have a fail often, fail fast, and fail cheap attitude. And of course, the validated learning that goes along with it. And I'm bringing Steve Blank up because he wrote an interesting blog post recently, which I'm kind of using here. And when he failed with a company, the reason he was on the cover of Wired almost 30 years ago was because they had one of the hottest startups in the valley at that point. It was in gaming. And they said, this is going to be the biggest gaming company ever built, or it's going to be the biggest bust in Silicon Valley. Well, it turned out to be the bust, unfortunately. Steve Blank was a co-founder, also CEO. And after this experience, he started realizing something, that failure actually happens in 6 different phases on a personal level. Shock and surprise. What happened here? Also the denial part of it. I raised the money, I hired the right people. It's not my fault. I did what the investors expected me to do. It's the other's fault. It's the guy over here who jumped ship. I mean, it didn't work out, it's not my fault. You start blaming others, the anger. You also get depressed. I mean, he wrote that he didn't get out of bed for a long time. He just stayed at home. But then finally kind of kicked in. I have to take my share of the blame. And then the most important thing is get to insights and change. These are his key learnings from that lesson. And I like to end this talk by just getting to the last one, to get to insights to change behavior and commit to challenge and do different next time. And that's what I like you to consider. How can you do things different next time you fail? Because you are going to fail in different ways. You're not going to do incompetent failures, of course. You're not going to make mistakes. But if you work with innovation and you do try some experimentation, you're going to fail. But next time, how can you learn from it so you do it different next time? Thank you very much. I hope you got some insights here, and perhaps we got time for a few questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Do we
Some
need a
deep-
microphone?